Michael Myers, the silent stalker who defined the modern slasher genre. Michael Myers first appeared in Halloween on October 25, 1978, in a film made for just $300,000 that would go on to gross $70 million domestically, becoming one of the most profitable independent films ever made. Director John Carpenter and producer Deborah Hill created Michael as the embodiment of pure evil, a force that simply cannot be killed. 6-year-old Michael murders his teenage sister Judith on Halloween night in 1963, then escapes from a psychiatric hospital 15 years later on October 30th, 1978. Dr. Loomis, played by Donald Pleasance, describes him as having no reason, no conscience, and no understanding of life or death. Nick Castle portrayed the character in most scenes, credited simply as the Shape in the film's closing credits. What makes Michael truly iconic is his expressionless white mask, actually a modified Captain Kirk mask painted white, and his silent, relentless pursuit. The film pioneered the final girl trope, with Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, establishing conventions that would define horror for decades. Michael Myers proved that the most terrifying monsters don't need supernatural powers or elaborate backstories. They just need to be unstoppable. Freddy Krueger, a child murderer who weaponized nightmares. Wes Craven unleashed Freddy Krueger in A Nightmare on Elm Street on November 9, 1984, creating a villain who attacked the one place we're supposed to feel safe. Craven's inspiration came from Los Angeles Times articles about a series of mysterious deaths where victims reported recurring nightmares before dying in their sleep. The character's appearance drew from a disfigured homeless man who frightened Craven as a child, combined with memories of a childhood bully named Fred Krueger. Robert Englund brought Freddy to life with his distinctive voice and menacing presence. In the film, Fred Krueger was the Springwood slasher who murdered approximately 20 children in a boiler room before being released on a technicality when the arrest warrant was signed in the wrong place. Vigilante parents burned him alive, but dream demons gave him the power to kill victims in their nightmares. His iconic glove features razor blades welded onto fingers, while his burned face, red and green striped sweater, and brown fedora became instantly recognizable. A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, revealed his disturbing origin as the son of a nun who was assaulted in an asylum, earning him the title, the bastard son of 100 maniacs. Freddy's genius lies in making sleep itself dangerous. Everyone has to sleep eventually, creating inescapable tension that spawned 8 films and cemented his status as a horror legend. Jason Voorhees, the hockey-masked killer, holds the record for most on-screen kills in slasher history. Jason Voorhees first appeared as a child in Friday the 13th in 1980, though his mother Pamela served as the original killer. Jason became the franchise's main antagonist in Friday the 13th Part 2 in 1981. The character's backstory reveals he drowned at Camp Crystal Lake in 1957 while counselors weren't paying attention. Born with hydrocephalus and mental disabilities, Jason was kept isolated by his protective mother. In Part 2, he wore a burlap sack with a single eye hole to hide his face. The iconic hockey mask didn't appear until Friday the 13th Part 3 in 1982, and its origin is remarkably accidental. 3D effects supervisor Martin J. Sadoff brought a Detroit Red Wings goalie mask to set for a lighting test. Director Steve Miner loved it, and horror history was made. In the film, Jason steals the mask from a character named Shelley Finkelstein. The mask features distinctive red triangular markings, and later received an axe crack that appeared in subsequent films. Kane Hodder portrayed Jason in 4 consecutive films, more than any other actor. With reportedly over 300 kills across the franchise, Jason's evolution from sympathetic drowned child to unstoppable killing machine mirrors the slasher genre's own development. The simplicity of the hockey mask makes it simultaneously ordinary and terrifying. Leatherface, the chainsaw-wielding cannibal, brought horror to America's back roads. Tobe Hooper introduced Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in October 1974, creating a villain partially inspired by real-life Wisconsin serial killer Ed Gein. Gunnar Hansen portrayed Leatherface in the original film after researching mentally disabled children to accurately portray the character's intellectual disabilities. Ed Gein, known as the Plainfield Ghoul, murdered at least 2 women in 1950s Wisconsin and fashioned masks from human faces, created furniture from bones, and exhumed corpses from graveyards. But the film's plot is largely fictional. Gein worked alone and never used a chainsaw, making the marketing claim of being based on a true story more promotional tactic than reality. Hooper's inspiration for the chainsaw came during a Christmas 1972 shopping rush when he saw a display of chainsaws at a department store. The character wears different masks to represent different personalities and moods. Produced for under $140,000, The film grossed over $30 million domestically and was selected for National Film Registry preservation in 2012 as culturally and historically significant. Leatherface tapped into primal fears about venturing into unfamiliar territory and encountering people whose values are completely alien, creating a villain whose brutality felt disturbingly grounded in reality. Chucky, a serial killer's soul trapped in a children's doll. Don Mancini created Chucky for Child's Play, released November 9, 1988, transforming childhood innocence into pure nightmare fuel. Brad Dourif has voiced the character in all films and the television series, with the exception of the 2019 reboot featuring Mark Hamill. The character's full name is Charles Lee Ray, also known as the Lakeshore Strangler, who uses a voodoo ritual to transfer his soul into a good guy doll after being shot by Detective Mike Norris. Director Tom Holland initially cast Dourif for the physical performance, but then decided he should also voice the doll. Dourif initially worked on a Chicago accent before realizing the project's campy nature and adopting a more theatrical approach. He didn't expect the film to succeed, calling it just another doll horror movie. Instead, it spawned 7 main films, a reboot, and a television series that premiered in 2021. The franchise has generated over $250 million, including merchandise. Chucky inspired an entire subgenre of creepy doll horror films. The genius of the character lies in perverting something designed to comfort children into a source of terror, with Dourif's distinctive vocal performance making Chucky both frightening and darkly humorous across more than 35 years. Pennywise. Stephen King's dancing clown made an entire generation fear circus performers. King created Pennywise for his 1986 novel, It, after asking himself what scares children more than anything else. The answer was clowns. Tim Curry first portrayed Pennywise in the 1990 ABC television miniseries, while Bill Skarsgård took on the role in the 2017 film It and its 2019 sequel. The character is an ancient trans-dimensional entity from the Macroverse that feeds on fear, appearing in Derry, Maine approximately every 27 years to prey on children. Pennywise the dancing clown is merely the form it most often takes, though it can shapeshift into victims' worst fears. The 2017 film grossed approximately $700 million worldwide, becoming one of the most successful R-rated films in history. Curry's performance emphasized charm masking evil with a more traditional clown appearance, while Skarsgård's version featured twitchy movements and an animalistic stare that felt more overtly inhuman. Both actors reported being frightened by the character, with Skarsgård seeing Pennywise in his dreams after filming. Even King himself stated the story was too scary for him to revisit. Pennywise taps into coulrophobia and the uncanny valley effect, where something meant to be cheerful becomes deeply disturbing, creating universal terror that transcends generations. Ghostface. Horror's first postmodern killer knew all the rules. Kevin Williamson and Wes Craven created Ghostface for Scream, released December 20th, 1996, revolutionizing the slasher genre through meta-commentary. Unlike other horror icons, Ghostface isn't a single person, but a persona adopted by different killers throughout the franchise. Williamson conceived the film after learning about the Gainesville Ripper, who murdered 5 college students in Florida in 1990. The iconic mask has a wild origin story. Producer Marianne Maddalena discovered it while location scouting at an abandoned house in Santa Rosa, California. The mask was originally created by Funworld as the Peanut-Eyed Ghost in their Fantastic Faces series, inspired by Edvard Munch's painting The Scream. In the film universe, the costume is called Father Death and is an easily obtainable Halloween costume. Roger L. Jackson provides the voice in all films using the signature voice changer. The original killers were Billy Loomis and Stu Macher, but at least 14 different people have used the Ghostface identity across the franchise. The film revitalized the flagging slasher genre by making horror self-aware, with characters who know horror movie tropes and actively try to avoid them, creating new kinds of suspense where the rules themselves become part of the game. By the way, if you're enjoying this so far, I post videos like this regularly. Subscribing would really help out. Dracula. Bela Lugosi defined vampires for the next century. Born Bela Ferenc Dezo Blasco on October 20th, 1882 in Lugos, Hungary, near Transylvania, Lugosi originated the role of Dracula in the 1927 Broadway stage production before bringing it to film. He created the signature characterization on stage with the makeup, formal dress, widow's peak, slicked hair, and distinctive mannerisms that became inseparable from the character. Universal's Dracula premiered February 12, 1931 at the Roxy Theater in New York and was released nationwide 2 days later. The film grossed over $700,000 profit on a modest budget, becoming Universal's biggest success of 1931. His famous line, "I never drink wine," entered the national consciousness, delivered in his thick Hungarian accent. Newspapers reported audiences fainted at screenings, publicity shrewdly orchestrated by Universal Studios. Within 48 hours of opening, the Roxy Theater sold 50,000 tickets. Lugosi never wore fangs in his Dracula performances. The film was the first talking horror film and served as the catalyst for horror becoming a popular genre. Its success led to Universal becoming the premier horror studio. Tragically, Lugosi only played Dracula twice on film, in the original and Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein in 1948, becoming severely typecast. He died August 16, 1956, and was buried in one of his Dracula capes, symbolizing how completely the character consumed his identity and legacy. Hannibal Lecter. The cultured cannibal redefined sophisticated evil. Thomas Harris created Hannibal Lecter in his 1981 novel, Red Dragon, but Anthony Hopkins made him immortal in The Silence of the Lambs in 1991. Hopkins' performance was based on only 16 minutes of screen time, yet that brief appearance earned him the Academy Award for Best Actor. The film won all 5 major Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Director, Actor, Actress, and Screenplay. The American Film Institute ranked Lecter number 1 on their list of 100 greatest villains. The character is a psychiatrist and cannibalistic serial killer who combines impeccable taste, high intelligence, and disturbing charisma. Mads Mikkelsen later portrayed a younger Lecter in the NBC series Hannibal from 2013 to 2015. Hopkins achieved horror immortality with minimal screen time, proving that terror doesn't require constant presence. Lecter redefined the villain archetype by being sophisticated and articulate rather than brutish, showing that the most dangerous monsters can be sitting across from you at dinner, discussing fine wine and classical music. His cultural impact extends beyond horror into psychological thriller territory, demonstrating how the genre evolved in the 1990s to embrace more cerebral terrors. Norman Bates, the mama's boy who invented the psychological thriller. Robert Bloch created Norman Bates in his 1959 novel, Psycho, inspired by the Ed Gein case. Anthony Perkins portrayed Norman in Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 film adaptation, delivering a performance that elevated horror from B-movie status to prestige cinema. The famous shower scene remains one of cinema's most iconic sequences. The twist reveal that Norman killed his mother and assumed her identity shocked 1960 audiences who had never seen anything like it. The film became Hitchcock's highest-grossing and most influential work. Norman represented a new type of horror villain who was sympathetic, damaged, and psychologically complex rather than simply evil. Perkins' nuanced performance made Norman simultaneously pitiable and terrifying. The Bates Motel television series from 2013 to 2017 later explored the character's origin story. Norman Bates showed that horror villains could be tragic figures worthy of psychological analysis, rather than simple monsters to be defeated. Hitchcock proved the genre could be both artistically significant and commercially successful, opening doors for horror to be taken seriously as cinema rather than dismissed as exploitation. The Xenomorph. H.R. Geiger's biomechanical nightmare perfected the Predator. Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett created the creature for Alien in 1979, directed by Ridley Scott. Swiss artist H.R. Geiger designed the Xenomorph with a disturbing combination of organic and mechanical elements that felt genuinely alien. The creature has multiple life stages including egg, facehugger, chestburster, and adult, with the famous chestburster scene shocking audiences and becoming instantly iconic. The film won the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. The Xenomorph operates on pure instinct with no malice, simply functioning as the perfect organism designed to survive and reproduce. The design's sexual undertones added layers of psychological discomfort that elevated it beyond simple monster movie fare. The franchise spawned multiple sequels, including Aliens in 1986, which showed multiple xenomorphs working together. Sigourney Weaver's Ellen Ripley became horror's greatest female protagonist, battling this creature. The Xenomorph demonstrated that horror could transcend genre boundaries, proving terrifying monsters could work in science fiction settings. Geiger's nightmarish biomechanical design created something that felt truly unknowable and operated on completely inhuman logic, influencing decades of science fiction horror hybrids and establishing a new template for alien life in cinema. Pinhead. Clive Barker brought philosophical horror to the slasher era. Barker created Pinhead for Hellraiser in 1987, based on his novella, The Hellbound Heart. Doug Bradley portrayed Pinhead in 8 films, bringing sophisticated menace to the character. Pinhead leads the Cenobites, interdimensional beings who explore extremes of sensation and blur the lines between pain and pleasure. His distinctive appearance features a pale head covered in a grid pattern with nails hammered into the skull, creating one of horror's most striking visual designs. Unlike other 1980s slashers who were silent or delivered quippy one-liners, Pinhead spoke in eloquent, philosophical dialogue about the nature of suffering and desire. He became a horror icon despite limited screen time in the original film. The character represented a more cerebral approach to horror, elevating the genre through articulate philosophy rather than just visceral scares. Pinhead's promise that he would tear your soul apart wasn't just a threat, but an invitation to experience sensation beyond human comprehension. This intellectual dimension made him stand out in the crowded 1980s horror landscape, proving villains could be both visually disturbing and philosophically complex, appealing to audiences seeking more than simple slasher thrills. Regan MacNeil, the possessed child who proved horror could tackle faith seriously. William Friedkin directed The Exorcist in 1973, based on William Peter Blatty's novel, with Linda Blair portraying the demon-possessed Regan MacNeil. The film depicts demonic possession and exorcism with unprecedented realism and intensity. Reports claimed audience members fainted, vomited, and fled theaters during screenings, creating mass hysteria around the film's release. It became the first horror film nominated for the Best Picture Academy Award, legitimizing the genre in ways previously impossible. The film grossed over $440 million worldwide, becoming the highest-grossing R-rated horror film for decades. The character of possessed Regan, with her head spinning, spider-walking, and disturbing voice, created images that haunted viewers for years. The film sparked genuine controversy and debate about religious themes, with some religious groups protesting while others embraced its portrayal of faith battling evil. The Exorcist elevated horror to serious art by grappling with genuine questions about faith, evil, and the existence of the devil. Its cultural impact was unprecedented, earning Oscar nominations typically reserved for prestige dramas while simultaneously terrifying audiences and breaking box office records, proving horror could be both commercially successful and artistically significant. If this was interesting to you, consider subscribing so you catch every new video. Thanks for watching.